Okay, so just looking at something called midpoint. Midpoint is, as it's defined, as the middle. So if I look at, let's say, a segment here, I'll call it AB. Okay, the middle of that segment, which I'll call M, would cut this in half. And realize here that AM would be congruent to MB. They would be the exact same length. So again, it cuts into two equal halves. A segment bisector is something a little different. A segment bisector, like imagine I had a line that went through M. Call it line L. Line L would be called a segment bisector. Again, it doesn't just have to be a line. It could be a plane. It could be a segment. Anything that's cutting another segment, in this case AB in half, is called a segment bisector. One thing to note about the midpoint formula, again, you're finding the average. That's all you're finding here. So you're going to add them up and divide by 2. Be careful that you always add and then divide by 2. You're going to get mixed up with the distance formula where you're going to subtract. So just be careful at that point. Looking at an example here, what is the midpoint? Well, the midpoint here between 2 points, let's say I want to find M. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to add the x's, in which case I'm going to get -2 plus 8, and I'm going to divide that by 2. And my y's here are going to be 5 and -3. Sorry, 5 plus -3. So which is 5 minus 3, all divided by 2. Simplifying this, I end up getting 6 over 2, comma, I guess that would be 2 over 2. So I get 6 over 2 and 2 over 2, which can be reduced to basically just 3 and 1. So there's my midpoint here. My midpoint right here, M, would be 3, comma, 1. One last point is, suppose I gave you a different scenario where you had one of the endpoints, but you didn't have the other one, let's say B, but we knew the midpoint. Well, you could use algebra. What I'm going to do here is look at it logically and say, well, if it's the middle, if M is the middle, it has to be the same distance away from B as it is from A, in which case the x's have to be all the same and the y's have to be all the same in terms of length or distances away. So what I do is I say, well, we started at -2 and went to 0. What did we go? Well, in this case, we increased. So going from -2 to 0, we went up by +2. In which case, to go to my next x, I need to go up by another 2, in which case that would be 2. Here I went from -2 to 0. My next jump should be 0 to 2, because they all went by +2. Do the same thing for the y's. Here I went down from 6 to -3, which is going down by 9. So here I should also go down by 9. So -3 minus 9 will actually give me -12. It always makes me laugh when students do a question like this. They don't check their work. You can always see if you got it right, because I can check, do I get the midpoint back? In other words, does -2 plus 2, that gives me 0, divided by 2 gives me 0? Yeah. Does 6 minus 12, which gives me -6, divided by 2 give me -3? Yes. So I can be confident that this is the other endpoint. It would be 2 comma -12. And that's how to find it, the endpoint when you're given the midpoint and one of the endpoints.